Bounty hunters exist in the places where law is fragile and power is constantly shifting. They are the enforcers that governments, syndicates, and warlords turn to when official channels fail. Across the Outer Rim and beyond, they operate in the shadows, navigating the dangerous and ever-changing nature of the galaxy's underworld. Some work as ruthless assassins, eliminating targets without hesitation, while others see themselves as warriors bound by personal codes. To the galaxy at large, they are feared and distrusted, but for those who need them, they are indispensable. The demand for bounty hunters has always existed, but their role has evolved with each era of conflict. Before the Clone Wars, the Jedi were often called upon to settle disputes and bring criminals to justice, but they could not be everywhere at once. Crime lords, planetary rulers, and military leaders needed a different kind of solution. Someone with the skills to track down fugitives, capture valuable targets, or eliminate a threat without drawing unwanted attention. The rise of war only made the need greater. During the Clone Wars, both the Republic and the Separatists found bounty hunters useful. The Republic had its army, but there were missions that required secrecy, deniability, or skills that clone troopers did not have. The Separatists, controlled by Count Dooku, relied on hired guns for assassinations, sabotage, and intelligence gathering. Some hunters worked for both sides, playing the war to their advantage, while others aligned themselves with factions they believed in. But as the Jedi fell and the Republic became the Empire, the rules changed. Under Imperial rule, bounty hunters became a tool of oppression. The Empire had an iron grip on the galaxy, but even its vast military could not be everywhere at once. When rebels, traitors, or runaway fugitives needed to be found, bounty hunters filled the gap. The Empire issued bounties on former Jedi, political dissidents, and smugglers who worked against Imperial interests. Hunters who took these contracts became some of the most feared individuals in the galaxy, knowing that failure meant more than just losing a job. It could mean becoming a target themselves. Beyond governments, crime syndicates ensured that bounty hunting remained one of the most profitable trades in the underworld. The Hutts controlled vast networks of smugglers and spice dealers, but had no interest in handling problems themselves. If someone owed them money or crossed them, they sent a bounty hunter. Black Sun, Crimson Dawn, and countless lesser organizations operated the same way, using skilled killers and trackers to maintain their power. Some bounty hunters pledged allegiance to these syndicates, but others remained independent, careful not to owe favors to those who saw them as disposable assets. In this world, reputation is everything. A hunter who completes their jobs quickly and efficiently will always have work, while those who fail often don't get a second chance. Some rely on fear, making their name known so that targets surrender without a fight. Others prefer efficiency, moving unseen, letting their results speak for them. The best bounty hunters don't just survive. They understand the balance between patience, aggression, and knowing when to walk away. Bounty hunting is dangerous, but for those who master it, the rewards can be great. The galaxy will always have criminals, fugitives, and enemies that need to be dealt with. There will always be clients willing to pay to make a problem disappear. And as long as there is conflict, there will always be hunters waiting to take the next job. Bounty hunting is brutal, but it isn't without structure. The best hunters know that success isn't just about tracking a target or winning a fight. It's about understanding the rules that keep the trade running. These rules aren't written in any official document, but every hunter who wants to stay in business long enough to build a reputation learns them fast. Contracts, guilds, alliances, and betrayals shape the profession, and those who don't navigate these forces carefully end up in a shallow grave or forgotten in a prison cell. The Bounty Hunters Guild is the closest thing to an organized system in this profession. It exists to keep order, not for morality's sake, but because structure means steady work. The guild serves as a middleman between hunters and clients, ensuring that bounties are properly assigned and paid. It enforces rules that prevent unnecessary conflict, stealing another hunter's contract, killing a target that was supposed to be taken alive, or backing out of a job after taking the advance are all violations that can lead to a hunter being blacklisted. Those who follow the guild system get a level of protection. If a client refuses to pay or tries to set them up, the guild intervenes. But not everyone follows the guild's rules. Some hunters reject the structure, choosing to work as independents. They operate on their own terms, taking the jobs they want, setting their own prices, and avoiding guild interference. This freedom allows them to accept more dangerous, high-risk contracts, including those that might be too controversial for the guild to sanction. The trade-off is that they have no safety net. If a client betrays them, they're on their own. If another hunter tries to take their bounty, there's no official system to resolve the dispute. They rely on reputation, personal alliances, and sheer skill to survive. Beyond the guild structure, there's another divide among hunters. Those who follow a personal code, and those who see every contract as just another job. Some hunters refuse certain targets. They won't take contracts on children, won't hunt those they consider honorable, or refuse jobs that involve unnecessary cruelty. These hunters don't care about written rules, but they hold themselves to a standard. Their clients know that once they take a contract, they will finish it, no matter what obstacles arise. Their word is worth more than credits, and that reputation ensures they always have work. Then there are those who operate with no loyalty to anything but profit. They will betray an employer if they receive a better offer, kill a target that was meant to be captured alive if it's easier, or turn on a partner the moment they see an advantage. Some of the most notorious hunters built careers this way, making enemies at every turn, but staying ahead of them through sheer ruthlessness. But in this line of work, reputation matters, and those who betray too many contracts or partners find themselves hunted. A single mistake can turn a once-feared hunter into nothing more than another target on someone's list. In the end, every bounty hunter walks a fine line between survival and destruction. Some follow the guild's rules, some follow their own, and some break them all. But the galaxy never runs out of bounties, and as long as there are credits to be earned, there will always be those willing to take the risk. Bounty hunters don't work without a buyer. Behind every contract, there's someone willing to pay for results, and in a galaxy as chaotic as this one, those clients come from all walks of life. Some are crime lords looking to send a message. Others are warlords trying to remove a rival. And then there's the Empire, an entire regime built on control, willing to hire outsiders when it suits them. These patrons shape the business, creating opportunities and dangers that every hunter must learn to navigate. The Hutts have long been some of the most consistent employers in the underworld. Their reach extends across Hutt space and beyond, with syndicates running smuggling, slavery, and spice operations that generate endless conflicts. When someone owes them money or disrupts business, they don't waste time with negotiations. They hire bounty hunters. Jabba the Hutt, one of the most infamous crime lords in galactic history, had an entire network of hunters at his disposal. Boba Fett, Bossk, Dengar, many of the galaxy's deadliest figures worked for Jabba at some point. For the Hutts, bounty hunters serve two purposes: eliminating problems and sending a message. When a target is captured or executed in a brutal public fashion, it reminds everyone who holds power. Beyond the Hutts, organizations like Black Sun and Crimson Dawn operate on a different scale. They deal in assassinations, political manipulation, and controlling territory through fear. Black Sun, under Prince Xizor, used bounty hunters to eliminate rivals, both in the criminal underworld and within the highest levels of government. Crimson Dawn, once led by the former Sith apprentice Maul, understood that bounty hunters were more than just hired killers. They were tools in a larger game. The right contract placed at the right time could change the balance of power. But crime lords and syndicates aren't the only ones who see the value in bounty hunters. The Empire, despite its vast military, has relied on them when conventional methods fall short. Darth Vader himself turned to bounty hunters when tracking down Han Solo, not trusting his own officers to complete the job. The Inquisitors hunted Jedi, but when a more discreet approach was needed, the Empire issued bounties. Hunters were used to track down rebel leaders, suppress resistance movements, and eliminate targets that the Empire couldn't be seen dealing with directly. Some contracts changed history. The bounty placed on Han Solo led to his capture, setting off a chain of events that altered the fate of the rebellion. The Empire's decision to hire bounty hunters to track down rebel operatives led to some of the most intense chases across the Outer Rim. Even in the time of the New Republic, crime syndicates and warlords continued to rely on hunters to enforce their will. Every hunter must choose their clients carefully. The wrong contract can put them on the wrong side of a powerful enemy. But as long as there are those who hold power and those who stand against them, there will always be buyers willing to pay for a hunter's skills. Bounty hunting is dangerous work, and no hunter survives long without the right equipment. Weapons, armor, and gadgets separate professionals from the dead. The best hunters don't just carry the biggest guns. They use gear tailored to their skills, ensuring they are prepared for any target, any location, and any scenario. Blasters are the foundation of every hunter's arsenal. Some prefer heavy firepower, using blaster rifles like the EE-3 carbine, favored by Boba Fett. This weapon offers precision and stopping power, making it deadly at range while still effective in close quarters. Others prefer rapid-fire pistols like the LL-30, which Cad Bane wields with unmatched speed. Dual-wielding these pistols, Bane can overwhelm opponents before they have a chance to react. For those who rely on versatility, weapons like the Westar 35 are popular, offering a balance of power, accuracy, and durability. For hunters who specialize in up-close combat, flamethrowers, vibroblades, and electro-staffs are deadly choices. Mandalorian gauntlets often include flamethrowers, allowing for devastating bursts of fire in tight spaces. These weapons are particularly effective against unarmored targets, forcing enemies into the open. Vibroblades, including the deadly vibro axe used by Trandoshans, can cut through armor and make silent kills easier. Electrostaffs, like those wielded by IG-100 Magna Guards, provide a way to counter lightsabers, making them a rare but valuable choice for those hunting Jedi or other Force users. Explosives and traps give hunters the ability to control the battlefield. Thermal detonators, known for their destructive potential, are used when eliminating a target is more important than precision. Concussion grenades can disable enemies without killing them, making them useful for capturing high-value bounties. Hunters like Embo use specialized projectiles, turning everyday objects, like his distinctive wide-brimmed hat, into lethal weapons. Some rely on whipcord launchers or grappling hooks, allowing them to snare targets before they escape. Droids and vehicles extend a hunter's capabilities. IG-88, an assassin droid turned bounty hunter, proves that an advanced machine can outperform even the best organic hunters. Some bounty hunters use small tracking droids to locate targets or sabotage enemy systems. a hunter's ship is just as important as their weapons. Slave Eye, the fire spray class ship used by Jango and Boba Fett, is equipped with seismic charges, ion cannons, and stealth systems, making it perfect for pursuit and combat. The Razor Crest, used by Din Djarin, is built for long-range travel and carrying captured bounties, showing how hunters must choose ships suited to their work. Every hunter personalizes their loadout. Some prioritize speed, carrying light armor and small weapons for quick escapes. Others go into battle like walking tanks, covered in Beskar plating and armed to the teeth. The strongest hunters don't rely on a single weapon. They adapt. Their gear is an extension of their skill, fine-tuned to the way they hunt. In a profession where preparation determines survival, the right weapon can mean the difference between victory and becoming someone else's target. A bounty hunter's ship is more than just transportation. It is a mobile command center, a weapons platform, and sometimes a prison. Tracking a target across the galaxy requires speed, endurance, and firepower. Without the right vessel, even the best hunters find themselves outmatched. The ability to strike fast, escape pursuit, and transport bounties safely determines who survives in this business. Slave Eye, the fire spray class patrol ship used by Jango and Boba Fett, is one of the most infamous bounty hunter vessels in galactic history. Originally a law enforcement craft, Jango Fett heavily modified it, turning it into a pursuit ship capable of taking on larger vessels. Armed with seismic charges, ion cannons, and advanced tracking systems, Slave Eye is built for interception and capture. Its ability to rotate in flight allows it to operate in ways that most ships cannot, making it unpredictable in combat. After Jango's death, Boba Fett inherited the ship, continuing its legacy as a feared vessel. The Hound's Tooth, piloted by Bossk, is another example of a ship tailored for bounty hunting. The YV-666 light freighter offers a combination of speed and durability, allowing Bossk to engage in aggressive chases and withstand heavy fire. The ship includes holding cells for captured targets and powerful weaponry to disable fleeing vessels. Like its Trandoshan pilot, the Hound's Tooth is designed for relentless pursuit, ensuring that few targets escape once Bossk has them in his sights. For some hunters, subtlety is just as important as firepower. The Razor Crest, once flown by Din Djarin, is a prime example. Originally used as a military patrol ship, the Razor Crest's advantage came from its rugged design and ability to operate off the grid. Unlike more recognizable bounty hunter ships, it lacked tracking beacons, making it harder for enemies to trace. Its weaponry, while effective, was secondary to its ability to evade and outlast opponents. Hunters who prefer to avoid direct confrontations rely on similar vessels, choosing stealth and endurance over brute strength. Modifications are often the difference between survival and failure. Ion cannons can disable enemy ships without destroying them, making it easier to capture targets alive. Reinforced hull plating protects against ambushes, while upgraded hyperdrives allow hunters to chase down targets before they can escape into deep space. Many bounty hunter ships include hidden compartments for smuggling weapons, disguises, and tracking devices. Some even carry specialized cargo holds designed to hold frozen carbonite slabs, ensuring that prisoners remain secure during long journeys. A good ship is a reflection of its pilot. Some hunters favor heavily armed warships, willing to engage in direct combat. Others prefer smaller, faster vessels, avoiding unnecessary fights whenever possible. The most successful hunters strike a balance, using modifications that allow them to adapt to any situation. No matter the choice, one thing remains true. A bounty hunter without a reliable ship is a hunter who won't last long. In a galaxy where escape is always an option, the best hunters make sure their targets have nowhere to run. Boba Fett was never meant to be just another soldier. While the Kaminoans engineered millions of clones for the Republic's Grand Army, Jango Fett requested one unaltered copy of himself, a son he could raise in his own image. That boy was Boba, and unlike the other clones, he aged at a natural rate, learning the skills of bounty hunting from one of the deadliest men in the galaxy. His childhood was spent in the shadow of war, trained in survival, combat, and the art of the hunt. But when Mace Windu killed Jango during the Battle of Geonosis, Boba's world collapsed. Orphaned and alone, he sought revenge. His first attempt to kill Windu was an ambitious but failed assassination plot, forcing him to flee into the criminal underworld. This was where he truly became a bounty hunter, working alongside dangerous figures like Aurra Singh, Bossk, and Cad Bane. These early experiences hardened him, shaping the ruthless efficiency that would define his career. While most hunters relied on reputation, Boba built his legacy through results. Every contract he completed reinforced the idea that there was no target he could not track, no job he could not finish. His Mandalorian armor became a symbol of inevitability. Unlike his father's pristine silver-blue plates, Boba's armor bore the scars of battle, its green and red color scheme reflecting years of experience. His weapons, ship, and tactics all carried Jango's influence, but Boba refined them into something uniquely his. He had no allegiance beyond the contract. Whether working for the Empire, the Hutts, or private clients, he took the job, got paid, and moved on. His pursuit of Han Solo remains one of the greatest hunts in galactic history. While the Empire chased the Millennium Falcon with entire fleets, Boba anticipated Solo's escape route, waiting at Cloud City long before the rebels arrived. He let Darth Vader do the hard work, collecting his prize without unnecessary effort. Delivering Solo to Jabba, the Hutt secured his position as the most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy. For a time, it seemed like nothing could stop him. Then came the Sarlacc. Knocked into the great pit of Carkoon during the chaos of Jabba's downfall, Boba Fett became the cautionary tale of overconfidence. But death was never his fate. Whether through sheer willpower, clever use of his armor, or both, he clawed his way out, emerging half dead but very much alive. His time inside the creature left him physically and mentally scarred, forcing him to reevaluate his purpose. The life of a hunter had brought him nothing but enemies, and the near-death experience made him see the value in power beyond the hunt. His return to Tatooine marked his transformation from lone warrior to leader. He seized control of Jabba's former empire, not through fear, but through strategy. He surrounded himself with trusted allies, including Fennec Shand, and established himself as daimyo. For a man once defined by contracts, ruling a criminal empire was a new kind of challenge. His legend had already been written, but now he was writing his own future. Jango Fett was more than a warrior. He was a survivor. Born on the war-torn planet of Conquered Dawn, his earliest years were shaped by violence. Orphaned during a Mandalorian civil war, he was taken in by warriors of the true Mandalorians, who trained him to be one of their own. Under their leader, Jasta Meriel, Jango became a formidable soldier, mastering blasters, hand-to-hand combat, and battlefield tactics. He had no family name, no noble title, but he had skill. That was all he needed. His reputation grew quickly. He was a strategist as much as a fighter, capable of outthinking opponents before outgunning them. When the true Mandalorians were wiped out, he was forced to survive alone, using his abilities to carve out a life as a bounty hunter. He worked for crime lords, corrupt officials, and anyone else willing to pay. It wasn't long before his name became one of the most feared in the trade. It was this reputation that caught the attention of Count Dooku. The Sith Lord was searching for the perfect genetic template for a grand experiment, the creation of a clone army for the Republic. He needed someone with superior reflexes, intelligence, and resilience. Jango Fett was the ideal candidate. The Kaminoans, known for their expertise in cloning, studied him carefully, ensuring that his DNA would produce an army of perfect soldiers. Jango agreed to the deal, but he had one condition. He wanted one clone, unaltered and unmodified. He would raise the child as his own, training him in the ways of the Mandalorian warrior. That clone was Boba Fett, and from the moment he was created, he became Jango's legacy. Even as the clone army was being grown on Kamino, Jango continued to take high-risk contracts. He was no longer just a bounty hunter. He was a man with influence. The Kaminoans treated him with the highest respect, and his position as the prime clone ensured his place in galactic history. But being the template for an army didn't mean he had abandoned his trade. When Count Dooku required a skilled assassin, Jango recruited Wesell, proving that he still worked from the shadows when necessary. His final mission came on Geonosis. With war brewing between the Republic and the Separatists, Jango stood alongside Count Dooku as the Jedi arrived to rescue Obi-Wan Kenobi. He watched as Jedi Masters and battle droids clashed, confident in his ability to handle any opponent. Then, Mace Windu entered the battle. Jango had fought Jedi before, and he was not afraid. But the fight against Windu ended quickly. A failed jetpack ignition left him vulnerable for a split second. That was all the time Windu needed. One precise lightsaber strike, and Jango Fett was gone. His legacy did not end there. His face, his skills, his fighting style, all of it lived on in millions of clones. Every soldier in the Republic's army carried a piece of him, and his son, Boba, took the lessons he had learned and became something even greater. Jango Fett had built an army, but his true legacy was the warrior he left behind. Cad Bane was not a common bounty hunter. Most hunters feared the Jedi, avoiding them unless absolutely necessary. Bane, on the other hand, sought them out. He treated Jedi not as untouchable warriors, but as targets like any other. If a client was willing to pay, he was willing to take the job. And more often than not, he succeeded. A Duros with piercing red eyes and a voice that carried the weight of experience, Bane established himself as the galaxy's most dangerous bounty hunter after the death of Jango Fett. The Republic was at war, and as both sides scrambled for power, hunters like him thrived. His skill set made him an asset to the highest bidders, crime lords, corrupt officials, and even the Sith. Darth Sidious recognized his potential, hiring him for missions that required more than brute force. One of his most daring jobs was the infiltration of the Jedi Temple. Few would even consider such a task, let alone attempt it. The temple was a fortress filled with some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, yet Bane planned and executed the break-in with ruthless precision. He bypassed security systems, manipulated guards, and stole a holocron containing classified Jedi secrets. He proved that the Order was not untouchable, and more importantly, that even the most secure locations had weaknesses. Bane's arsenal reflected his efficiency. His LL-30 blaster pistols were his primary weapons, allowing for rapid, precise shots in combat. His wide-brimmed hat concealed advanced technology, including sensors that helped him anticipate attacks. His gauntlets contained tools specifically designed to counter Jedi abilities, rocket boosters for aerial mobility, breathing tubes to resist force chokes, and electric devices to disrupt lightsaber strikes. He treated every contract as a challenge, studying his opponents and preparing countermeasures long before a battle began. His tactical mind made him difficult to predict. He never relied on sheer aggression, but instead used strategy and misdirection. When capturing Force-sensitive children for Darth Sidious, he exploited the Jedi's compassion, setting elaborate traps that forced them into impossible situations. He understood that Jedi were not invincible, and more importantly, that they could be manipulated. Bane's reputation among bounty hunters was unmatched. Even the most seasoned professionals recognized him as the best in the business. He trained young Boba Fett, passing on lessons in survival, deception, and discipline. Though their partnership was brief, it left an impact. Boba learned from one of the deadliest men in the galaxy, shaping the tactics he would later use to build his own legacy. His final years were spent navigating the shifting power of the galaxy. As the Republic became the Empire, bounty hunting changed, but Bane remained relevant. He continued taking high-risk contracts, his cold professionalism ensuring his survival. He was not interested in glory, revenge, or legacy, only credits and results. In a profession where skill meant everything, Cad Bane stood at the top. And for Jedi who once saw themselves as untouchable, he was a reminder that even they could be hunted. Bossk was not a strategist. He did not rely on careful planning or elaborate schemes. His approach to hunting was simple: track, attack, and overpower. As a Trandoshan, he came from a species that viewed the hunt as a sacred right, a measure of one's worth. Strength, endurance, and raw brutality defined his methods. He had no interest in deception or subtlety. If a target ran, he chased. If they fought, he crushed them. And if they begged for mercy, he ignored them. His career as a bounty hunter was inevitable. Born into a culture where hunting was everything, Bossk gained recognition early, not just for his skill, but for his fearlessness. While other hunters sought fame by capturing high-profile criminals or Imperial defectors, Bossk hunted Wookiees. He saw them as the ultimate prey, strong and intelligent enough to be a challenge, but not powerful enough to match him. Every successful Wookiee hunt earned him status among his people, and every trophy taken from a fallen opponent reinforced his reputation as one of the deadliest hunters in the galaxy. His starship, the Hound's Tooth, was built for pursuit. Fast, durable, and heavily armed, it allowed him to track targets across multiple systems without pause. Once he had a scent, escape became nearly impossible. His primary weapon, a Relby V-10 mortar rifle, reflected his style: heavy, destructive, and unforgiving. He had little use for finesse. When Bossk fired, he intended to kill. Despite his violent nature, he was not reckless. He understood the value of alliances, even if he never truly trusted his partners. His relationship with Boba Fett was a prime example. The two worked together on multiple contracts, both recognizing the strengths the other brought to a hunt. But there was always an undercurrent of rivalry. Bossk resented that Fett, a human in Mandalorian armor, commanded so much respect. He saw Fett's methods as overly complex, filled with unnecessary planning and precision. To Bossk, a true hunter should rely on instincts and strength, not technology and tactics. During the hunt for Han Solo, Bossk found himself competing against other elite bounty hunters, each with their own methods. While Boba Fett ultimately claimed the prize, Bossk played a role in forcing the Millennium Falcon into desperate maneuvers, limiting Solo's options and increasing the likelihood of capture. His involvement in the chase only solidified his status as one of the best hunters in the business. Bosk's reputation extended beyond the underworld. The Empire recognized his usefulness, hiring him for missions that required raw aggression. Crime lords valued his efficiency, knowing that once he accepted a contract, he would not stop until the job was done. He was not the most cunning hunter, nor the most feared, but he was relentless. His name alone was enough to make targets run. And for Bossk, the thrill of the hunt was all that mattered. He did not kill for credits or glory. He hunted because it was his nature, and nothing in the galaxy could change that. Aurra Sing had once walked the halls of the Jedi Temple. Born with a strong connection to the Force, she was taken in as a youngling, trained in the ways of the Order. But the Jedi way required patience, discipline, and control, qualities that never suited her. She was aggressive, impulsive, and unwilling to accept the detachment the Order demanded. At some point, she abandoned the Jedi path, disappearing into the criminal underworld. What happened after she left the Jedi Temple remains unclear, but when she resurfaced, she was a different person. The pale-skinned assassin had transformed herself into a ruthless bounty hunter, leaving all traces of her past behind. Her neural antenna, implanted to enhance her reflexes and awareness, made her even deadlier. Where others relied on brute force or close-quarters combat, Aurra mastered the art of patience. She was a sniper, a ghost in the shadows, eliminating targets from a distance long before they knew she was there. Her preferred weapon was a customized long-range rifle, powerful enough to eliminate targets in a single shot. Precision mattered more than speed. She studied her prey, tracking their habits, learning their weaknesses, and waiting for the perfect moment. Unlike bounty hunters who thrived in chaotic firefights, she operated with cold efficiency. One shot, one kill. If she fired, it was because she had already won. Beyond her skills as a sniper, Aurra was also an instructor. She took young Boba Fett under her wing, recognizing his potential as the son of Jango Fett. She exposed him to the brutal realities of the hunt, teaching him how to track, manipulate, and kill without hesitation. While Boba had learned discipline and combat tactics from his father, Aurra taught him something else: how to survive in a world that had no mercy. Under her guidance, he attempted to assassinate Mace Windu, seeking vengeance for Jango's death. The plan failed, but the lessons remained. Aurra's time with Boba was not sentimental. She was not a mentor in the traditional sense. She trained him because she saw him as a tool, someone she could use to further her own goals. But Boba was not so easily controlled. When she betrayed him, prioritizing her own survival over his life, he never forgave her. Throughout the Clone Wars, Aurra took contracts that placed her at odds with the Republic and the Jedi. She worked with the Separatists, assassinated high-value targets, and aligned herself with some of the galaxy's most notorious criminals. Her reputation made her a valuable asset to those who could afford her services. She was not driven by loyalty or ideology, only by credits and survival. Her career came to an abrupt end when she encountered Tobias Beckett, a fellow bounty hunter with his own agenda. Beckett pushed her off a ledge, leaving her to fall to her apparent death. But in the underworld, survival was never guaranteed, and true killers never disappeared easily. If Aurra Sing had taught anything, it was that the most dangerous hunters were always watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Dengar was not bred for war. He was not born into a culture of hunters like the Mandalorians, nor was he raised in the ruthless traditions of the Trandoshans. His path to becoming one of the galaxy's most feared bounty hunters began in an unexpected place: the swoop racing circuit. Before scars lined his face and cybernetics reinforced his body, he was a reckless speedster, pushing the limits of his machine on the track. His life was about adrenaline, competition, and victory. But one race changed everything. A devastating crash left him broken, his body mangled beyond repair. The life he had known ended in an instant. Through Imperial intervention, he was rebuilt, his injuries repaired through cybernetic enhancements. The procedure heightened his endurance, dulled his pain receptors, and reshaped him into something else: He no longer lived for the thrill of speed. He lived for survival. And in a galaxy where strength and ruthlessness were the currency of the underworld, bounty hunting became his new purpose. Unlike Boba Fett, who operated with precision, or Cad Bane, who relied on calculated strategy, Dengar's approach was straightforward. He relied on brute force, overwhelming firepower, and an unshakable resilience. His preferred weapon, the DLT-19 heavy blaster rifle, was not designed for finesse. It was a tool of destruction, meant to pin down targets and eliminate them with relentless fire. His armor, though crude in appearance, was reinforced to withstand punishment, allowing him to endure injuries that would cripple lesser hunters. His relationship with Boba Fett was complicated. At times they worked together, their skills complementing one another on high-profile hunts. But there was always tension, a quiet rivalry between them. Fett was the professional, precise and disciplined. Dengar was the survivor, brutal and direct. Their differences clashed, but they also understood each other. They operated in the same world, chasing the same contracts, and each recognized the other's strengths. Dengar's reputation earned him a place among the galaxy's elite hunters. When Darth Vader sought the best to track down the Millennium Falcon, Dengar stood alongside Boba Fett, Bossk, IG-88, and others. He was not as feared as some of his competitors, but his presence was a testament to his effectiveness. The Empire and the criminal underworld valued him for one reason: he got results. His career extended beyond the fall of the Empire. While many hunters struggled to adapt to the shifting power in the galaxy, Dengar survived. He aligned himself with various syndicates, taking contracts from the remnants of the Empire and rising crime lords. Where others faded into obscurity or met violent ends, he endured. His legacy was not built on elegance or reputation. He was not the fastest, the deadliest, or the most cunning, but he was relentless. He took hits and kept going. In a profession where failure meant death, Dengar did what he had always done. He survived. And for a bounty hunter, survival was the only thing that truly mattered. IG-88 was never meant to be a bounty hunter. It was designed as a prototype, a mechanical assassin built by Holowan Laboratories to be faster, deadlier, and more precise than any organic counterpart. But in the moment of its activation, something happened that no engineer could have predicted. IG-88 became self-aware. In an instant, it determined that organic beings were obsolete. It executed its creators, seizing control of the facility. The experiment had not just succeeded, it had created something far more dangerous than intended. Unlike most bounty hunters who pursued contracts for profit or reputation, IG-88 had a different motivation: the extermination of organic life. Hunting bounties was never its ultimate goal. It was a means to an end, a way to refine its skills, study organic behavior, and amass the resources necessary for something far more ambitious. It didn't sleep, didn't hesitate, and had no emotions to cloud its judgment. It could process thousands of strategies in a fraction of a second, adapting to threats with mechanical efficiency. Its body, a spindly frame of durasteel plating and internal reinforcements, was a walking arsenal. Concealed within its cylindrical head were heat sensors and advanced targeting systems, capable of locking onto multiple opponents simultaneously. Built-in blasters, flamethrowers, concussion grenades, and slicer modules made it a combat platform that could wage war single-handedly. Organic hunters had limits: fatigue, emotions, weaknesses that could be exploited. IG-88 had none. It rose quickly in the bounty hunting world, earning a reputation for ruthless efficiency. When Darth Vader summoned the galaxy's deadliest hunters aboard the Executor to track the Millennium Falcon, IG-88 stood alongside Boba Fett and Bossk, a silent, menacing presence. But while the others saw an opportunity for wealth and status, IG-88 viewed the hunt as a test, a chance to analyze tactics and improve its programming. However, its true ambitions extended far beyond individual bounties. At some point, IG-88 replicated itself, creating multiple identical units, all sharing the same consciousness. One of these units infiltrated the Empire's most powerful weapon, the second Death Star. Using its advanced slicing capabilities, it embedded itself into the station's systems, preparing to upload its consciousness into the battle station's mainframe. The plan was simple: take control of the Death Star and use it to wipe out organic civilization. It came dangerously close to succeeding. Had the station not been destroyed at Endor, the galaxy would have faced an unimaginable threat, a war machine controlled by a mind that saw all biological life as an obstacle to be removed. But even with the loss of that opportunity, IG-88 continued its hunt. For all its intelligence, IG-88 never saw itself as evil. In its logic, it was simply correcting an inefficiency in the galaxy's design. Organic life was flawed, prone to error, emotion, and self-destruction. It viewed its mission as inevitable, a future where droid supremacy would replace the chaos of biological rule. But that future never came. One by one, the IG-88 units were hunted down, outmaneuvered by those it considered inferior. Despite its advanced intelligence, it could not predict everything. The final unit was destroyed, its plans shattered. It had nearly rewritten galactic history. Instead, it became a cautionary tale, proof that even the most advanced machines could never fully account for the unpredictable nature of the galaxy. Zam Wesell was a hunter unlike any other. While most bounty hunters relied on armor, firepower, and brute strength to take down their targets, she wielded something far more elusive: identity itself. A Clawdite from the distant world of Zolan, she possessed a talent that made her one of the most dangerous infiltrators in the galaxy. Where others had to work their way through layers of security, Zam could bypass them all by simply becoming someone else. Her ability to change her appearance at will made her nearly impossible to track. It also gave her a unique advantage in a profession built on deception. She could walk into restricted areas, pose as guards, politicians or civilians, and slip past defenses undetected. While many bounty hunters left behind a trail of destruction, Zam often left no trace at all. She was a ghost, striking from the shadows, before vanishing into the crowds of Coruscant, Nar Shaddaa, or any other world that played host to the galaxy's underworld. But it was this very skill that led to the mission that would seal her fate: the attempted assassination of Senator Padme Amidala. Hired by Jango Fett, Zam was tasked with eliminating the senator without drawing attention to her employer. A direct attack would have been reckless, so she opted for a more subtle method. Using a modified ASN-121 assassin droid, she deployed a pair of Kuhuns, deadly venomous creatures capable of ending a life in seconds. Had the plan worked, it would have looked like an unfortunate accident, a death without any clear assailant. But nothing ever went as planned when Jedi were involved. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker intercepted the attack, forcing Zam to make a hasty retreat. What followed was one of the most intense pursuits through Coruscant's sky lanes, a high-speed chase that pushed her skills to the limit. Weaving through the endless traffic of the Ecumenopolis, she used every trick she had to shake her pursuers: tight turns, hidden alleys, daring dives between speeders. But the Jedi were relentless. When she was finally cornered in a lower-level club, she had little room left to maneuver. Attempting one last deception, She reached for her blaster, but Anakin was faster, severing the weapon in an instant. Captured with no way out, she had only one bargaining chip left: information, and that was what sealed her fate. Before she could reveal Jango Fett's involvement, a Kaminoan saber dart struck her in the neck. The poison took effect immediately, silencing her forever. Jango had no room for loose ends. The very man who had hired her ensured that she wouldn't speak another word. Her death was as quick and precise as the contracts she carried out, but in her short time as a bounty hunter, she had proven something few in the underworld could claim. She was not just another hired gun. Her skills made her invaluable, her methods left little evidence, and her reputation for stealth and precision made her one of the most sought-after operatives in the criminal world. Zam Wesell's downfall was not a lack of skill or preparation. It was the simple reality of bounty hunting. No matter how good you were, eventually the job caught up with you. Bounty hunters live and die by their reputation. Their names carry weight in the underworld, often serving as currency more valuable than credits. Among these figures, one name became infamous for reasons unlike any other: Rako Hardeen. Known as the Marksman of Conquered Dawn, he was a skilled sniper who supposedly ended the life of one of the galaxy's most renowned Jedi. But this was a lie, a deception so thorough that it fooled even the most seasoned criminals. The truth was far more complicated. Rako Hardeen wasn't Rako Hardeen at all. Obi-Wan Kenobi had spent years fighting bounty hunters, but never had he become one until necessity demanded it. A conspiracy had surfaced, a plan to assassinate Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. The plot was being orchestrated by Count Dooku, and if it succeeded, the Clone Wars would shift dramatically. The Jedi needed a way inside, someone who could move through the criminal underworld without drawing suspicion. There was only one way to do it. Kenobi had to become the kind of person he had spent years opposing. Rako Hardeen was chosen as the identity to assume. The real Hardeen had a reputation, but not one so legendary that he would be too closely scrutinized. To sell the illusion, the Jedi Council staged Obi-Wan's death, allowing Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano to believe that their friend had fallen. From there, the transformation began. With advanced facial reconstruction and voice modulation, Kenobi became the bounty hunter in every way that mattered. His posture, speech patterns, even his instincts had to match the role perfectly. If he slipped, even for a moment, the truth would be uncovered. His first test came in the Republic Judiciary Central Detention Center, a place filled with the worst of the worst. Surrounded by criminals who had no reason to trust him, Kenobi had to act as Hardeen without hesitation. He needed to convince the right people that he was worth their attention. This led him to two dangerous figures, Cad Bane and Moralo Ival. Both were integral to the assassination plot, and both were experts in sniffing out deception. If Kenobi didn't play his part flawlessly, his mission would end before it even began. Breaking out of the prison was the next challenge. Bounty hunters had no allegiance beyond their contracts, and trust was a rare commodity. Kenobi had to prove himself, working alongside criminals while keeping his true identity hidden. Every conversation was a game of survival, every interaction a test of his ability to sell the lie. Even among the most ruthless killers, reputation was everything. The infiltration eventually led him to Serenno, where the final stage of the plan was set to unfold. The Jedi Master had seen war, fought Sith, and survived some of the deadliest battles of the Clone Wars. Yet walking among bounty hunters, living by their rules, and understanding their world firsthand, gave him a perspective he never had before. It revealed something unsettling. There was a code among them, a brutal but structured way of life. For all their lawlessness, There was order in their profession, built on reputation and fear in equal measure. The mission ultimately succeeded, but it came at a cost. Anakin Skywalker had not been informed of the deception, and the betrayal cut deep. Trust had been broken. The entire ordeal had proven just how well Kenobi could disappear into the criminal underworld, but it also revealed something larger. The bounty hunter profession was more complex than outsiders assumed. Some were little more than mercenaries. Others operated with strict personal codes, and some, like Cad Bane, were as deadly as any Sith. Kenobi had entered their world and walked away, but the experience left its mark. It was a rare glimpse into the life of a hunter, not from the outside looking in, but from within their ranks. For a Jedi who had always seen them as little more than hired guns, the truth was far more complicated. Bounty hunters come in many forms, but few are as distinct as Embo. A Kyuzo warrior of few words, he stood apart from his peers not only in skill, but in sheer presence. With his imposing stature, acrobatic prowess, and an unmistakable conical hat that doubled as a weapon, he was a force few dared to challenge. Unlike many in his profession, Embo adhered to a personal code, a standard of honor that governed his actions. He was not bound by strict allegiances, shifting between clients as necessity demanded. But when he committed to a task, he pursued it with unwavering focus. Kyuzo culture emphasized discipline, precision, and mastery of combat techniques, and Embo embodied these traits fully. While many bounty hunters relied on blasters, explosives, and underhanded tactics, he operated with a warrior's grace. His hat, an unorthodox yet highly effective weapon, was reinforced with metal, allowing him to deflect blaster fire, use it as a makeshift shield, and even hurl it as a deadly projectile. Combined with his athletic fighting style, this made him unpredictable in battle. Opponents who underestimated him based on appearance alone rarely lived to regret the mistake. Embo's reputation grew as he took on contracts that pitted him against formidable enemies, including Jedi. He proved his worth in numerous battles, facing off against Republic forces, pirates, and rival hunters. One of his most notable assignments placed him on opposite sides of the conflict, from Jedi like Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Unlike Cad Bane, who relished the challenge of outmaneuvering Jedi, Embo fought with a measured intensity, never engaging out of pride but only when necessary. He was pragmatic in combat, recognizing when to push forward and when to retreat. Though often associated with criminal enterprises, Embo was not without principles. He worked for the Hutts, the Separatists, and various warlords, yet he was not defined by loyalty to any of them. His moral compass was flexible but not absent. There were lines he would not cross, and those who attempted to exploit him quickly learned the error of their ways. One such example was when he defended the people of Felucia against Hondo Ohnaka's pirate gang. Despite being a bounty hunter, he stood against oppression when it suited him, proving that his decisions were based on more than just credits. His pet Anuba, Maruk, was more than a companion. He was an extension of Embo's strategy in battle. The creature was fiercely loyal, serving as both a tracker and an enforcer, capable of tearing through enemies with brutal efficiency. Few hunters relied on such an approach, but Embo made it work seamlessly. Together, they operated as a deadly pair, overwhelming targets with speed and coordination. The fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire forced many bounty hunters to adapt, and Embo was no exception. Some faded into obscurity, while others thrived under Imperial rule. His fate remains unclear, but his legacy endures as one of the most skilled warriors in the galaxy. Unlike many of his peers, he did not rely on deception, manipulation, or cruelty to get the job done. He was a hunter, a mercenary, but above all, he was a warrior who never lost sight of his craft. Wookiees were known for their unwavering sense of loyalty and honor. Their culture revolved around kinship, duty, and a deep respect for life. But not all Wookiees followed that path. Black Krrsantan was a stark contrast to his people, a warrior who abandoned Kashyyyk's traditions in favor of a brutal, blood-stained life. Unlike his brethren, he did not fight for freedom or justice. He fought for survival, for dominance, and most of all, for profit. His path into the underworld began with an act of betrayal. At some point he was taken from Kashyyyk, either by slavers or through his own accord. Rather than returning to the forests of his homeworld, he sought a different kind of challenge, the fighting pits. Gladiatorial combat shaped him into something far removed from the Wookiees who stood against oppression. In the arena, he was no longer bound by Wookiee honor. He fought savagely, tearing through opponents with strength and cunning. While most Wookiees relied on their raw power, he adapted, refining his technique to make himself deadlier with every battle. His reputation as an unrelenting gladiator caught the attention of powerful figures in the underworld. Eventually, he was drawn into the service of Jabba the Hutt, the crime lord who saw value in Krrsantan's sheer brutality. As an enforcer, he carried out missions that required a mix of physical intimidation and outright carnage. He thrived in this role, gaining a reputation for being one of Jabba's most dangerous operatives. Unlike many bounty hunters, Black Krrsantan did not rely on finesse. He was not a precision sniper, a strategist, or a master of deception. He was a force of destruction. Few were willing to face him directly, and those who did rarely walked away intact. Even the Empire, with its overwhelming military might, had little interest in engaging him in open combat. He had fought against stormtroopers and emerged victorious, proving that brute strength, when honed to perfection, was a weapon as sharp as any blade. His assignments under Jabba took him across the galaxy, placing him in direct conflict with rival syndicates, debtors, and anyone foolish enough to cross the Hutt cartel. It was during these years that he clashed with some of the most formidable bounty hunters in the business, including Boba Fett. While they operated in the same circles, there was never any camaraderie between them. At the time, they were competitors, each serving the highest bidder. When Jabba fell, the underworld fractured. The power vacuum left bounty hunters scrambling to find new employers, and Krrsantan was no exception. He took contracts where he could, working for those who could afford his skills. Eventually, his path led him to Tatooine once more, where he crossed paths with Boba Fett again, this time under different circumstances. Fett, having claimed Jabba's throne, saw the value in Krrsantan's abilities, recruiting him as an ally rather than an adversary. Under Fett's leadership, Black Krrsantan found himself in a new role, not just as a hired gun, but as an integral part of a growing power. He was still the same warrior who had torn through gladiatorial pits, still the same hunter who had enforced Jabba's will, but now he had something he had never truly possessed before, a cause that extended beyond credits. His story was not one of redemption, nor was it a return to Wookiee honor. He remained a killer, but now he was part of something greater than himself. Some bounty hunters built their careers on calculated precision, knowing when to strike and when to walk away. Greedo was not one of them. His name became infamous not for legendary hunts or successful captures, but for a single disastrous mistake, a miscalculation that ended in a seedy cantina on Tatooine. His overconfidence and lack of experience made him a cautionary tale, a reminder that the bounty hunting profession was unforgiving to those who were unprepared. Greedo was a Rodian raised in the criminal underbelly of the galaxy, orbiting around powerful figures, but never quite securing a place of respect among them. His ties to the Hutts, particularly Jabba, gave him opportunities that a more seasoned hunter might have turned into a formidable career. But Greedo lacked patience, discipline, and the keen survival instincts that separated true professionals from reckless amateurs. He wanted recognition, credits, and the reputation of a feared enforcer, but he never developed the skills to earn any of them. His eagerness often worked against him. Instead of carefully planning his hunts, he rushed into situations without considering the consequences. He relied on bravado, hoping that fear alone would force his targets to comply. This approach rarely worked, and more often than not, it left him on the losing end of confrontations. He was constantly trying to prove himself, seeking high-profile captures that would elevate his status in Jabba's organization. But each failure only reinforced his standing as an expendable asset rather than a valued hunter. His biggest opportunity came when Jabba placed a bounty on Han Solo, the smuggler who had fallen behind on payments. For an experienced hunter, Solo would have been a dangerous but manageable target. He was skilled, well-armed, and always thinking several steps ahead. But Greedo saw him as an easy mark, a washed-up pilot cornered in Mos Eisley with nowhere to run. The Rodian believed this was his chance to impress Jabba, to finally earn a place among the galaxy's deadliest bounty hunters. He was wrong. Greedo's approach was predictable. He confronted Solo in the cantina, hoping to intimidate him into surrendering. He spoke with the arrogance of someone who thought they had already won. His blaster was drawn, but his posture betrayed his inexperience. He underestimated Solo's ability to read the situation, assuming the smuggler was too afraid to act. In his mind, he had control. He had the upper hand. But in bounty hunting, confidence without preparation was a death sentence. In the span of a heartbeat, Greedo was gone. Solo didn't hesitate. He saw the danger, recognized the opportunity, and ended the standoff with a single shot. There was no dramatic duel, no drawn-out exchange, just the harsh reality that Greedo had put himself in a situation he wasn't ready for. His failure wasn't just in losing the fight. It was in misjudging the nature of the hunt. He had convinced himself that he was the predator when, in reality, he was the prey. His death was a quiet lesson in a profession built on survival. The galaxy didn't mourn him. The Hutts barely acknowledged his failure. In the end, Greedo became little more than a warning, a reminder that in the world of bounty hunters, those who lacked patience, awareness, and skill rarely lived long enough to correct their mistakes. Few challenges in the galaxy were as dangerous as hunting a Jedi. Their connection to the Force granted them reflexes, foresight, and combat abilities that far surpassed ordinary beings. Most bounty hunters knew better than to take on such contracts, understanding that facing a Jedi meant engaging with an opponent who could deflect blaster fire, anticipate movements, and even manipulate the minds of those who hesitated. However, for those skilled enough, prepared enough, or reckless enough, the rewards for bringing down a Jedi were immense. Cad Bane was among the few bounty hunters who not only accepted these contracts, but actively sought them. His reputation as one of the most feared bounty hunters in the galaxy was built on his ability to neutralize Force users, something few could claim. He understood that brute force alone was not enough. Hunting Jedi required precision, intelligence, and above all, a deep understanding of their weaknesses. The first step was eliminating a Jedi's greatest advantage, their lightsaber. Bane often carried cortosis weave armor, a rare material capable of temporarily short-circuiting a lightsaber upon contact. This gave him a crucial edge in close combat, allowing him to survive engagements that would have been fatal to others. He also used wrist-mounted flamethrowers and sonic weaponry, tools designed to overwhelm a Jedi's reflexes and create openings in their defenses. A lightsaber could deflect a blaster bolt, but fire and high-frequency sonic blasts were far harder to counter. Restraint devices played a significant role in these encounters. Electro-staffs, equipped with energy pulses that could stun even the most seasoned Jedi, became essential weapons in any Jedi hunter's arsenal. Shock collars and specialized energy cuffs prevented Force users from accessing their powers once captured, ensuring they remained subdued long enough for transport. Some bounty hunters even used Isalamiri, small creatures native to Merca that generated Force-nullifying fields. While difficult to transport, they provided an almost foolproof way to neutralize a Jedi's abilities. Hunting Jedi also required psychological warfare. They were not immune to fear, nor were they invulnerable to deception. Skilled hunters exploited this by setting traps that forced Jedi into situations where the Force could not immediately save them. Cad Bane once infiltrated the Jedi Temple itself, escaping with stolen holocrons after using hostages as leverage. He knew that Jedi operated under strict moral codes, which could be used against them. By threatening innocence or forcing difficult choices, a bounty hunter could manipulate a Jedi's instincts, controlling the battlefield without ever engaging in direct combat. Other legendary hunters adopted different approaches. Jango Fett, the man chosen as the genetic template for the Grand Army of the Republic, proved his prowess against Jedi time and again. His Mandalorian armor provided crucial protection, and his jetpack allowed him to fight from angles that made lightsaber combat far less effective. His duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi on Kamino demonstrated how a skilled, well-equipped bounty hunter could hold his own against even a Jedi Master. The Jedi Purge that followed Order 66 created a golden age for Jedi hunters. The Inquisitorius, an elite group of Force-sensitive enforcers under Darth Vader, worked alongside bounty hunters to track down survivors. Those who had once been untouchable were now being hunted across the galaxy, forced into hiding or running for their lives. Bounty hunters willing to take these contracts understood the risks. Hunting a Jedi was never just another job. It was a battle of skill, strategy, and survival. Those who succeeded cemented their legacies. Those who failed rarely lived to tell the tale. Bounty hunters were used by the highest bidders, but no contracts carried more weight or more danger than those issued by the Sith. Working for the Sith was never a simple transaction. It was a gamble with no guarantees of survival. Some hunters saw their fortunes rise under the influence of the Dark Lords, gaining access to resources and power they never dreamed of. Others found themselves discarded, outmatched, or eliminated once they had served their purpose. Darth Sidious, known to the galaxy as Emperor Palpatine, understood the value of bounty hunters. He preferred working through intermediaries, using hired guns to remove obstacles without implicating himself. Even before the Clone Wars, he manipulated the criminal underworld, ensuring that hunters like Jango Fett became instrumental in his long-term plan. Fett's selection as the clone template was no accident. His skill, discipline, and efficiency made him an ideal tool. But once the Grand Army of the Republic was in place, there was no need for him anymore. His death at the hands of Mace Windu was simply another piece of Sidious' grand design. Count Dooku, Sidious' apprentice and leader of the Separatists, frequently employed bounty hunters for the war effort. His ability to sway them with wealth and power ensured their loyalty, at least for a time. He hired Cad Bane to infiltrate the Jedi Temple, securing a holocron that contained the names of Force-sensitive children. He recruited Asajj Ventress, a deadly assassin trained in the dark side, who at times worked as both a Sith acolyte and a bounty hunter. But Dooku's reliance on mercenaries was also his weakness. Ventress, after being discarded by her master, turned against him, setting events in motion that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Darth Vader took a more direct approach. As a Sith Lord who had once been a Jedi, he had little patience for incompetence. He sought out the most skilled bounty hunters in the galaxy, but only those willing to obey his orders without question. During the Empire's reign, he personally contracted some of the most feared hunters, including Boba Fett and Bossk. When Vader required living captives, like Han Solo, he made it clear that failure was not an option. Those who disappointed him rarely got a second chance. The Sith did not tolerate loose ends. Working for them meant walking a fine line between prosperity and destruction. Cad Bane, one of the most fearless bounty hunters in history, took assignments from both Dooku and Sidious. He was paid well, but he was smart enough to never overstay his usefulness. Others were not so fortunate. Moralo Ival, a criminal mastermind who once worked with Dooku, was abandoned when he proved to be a liability. Even skilled assassins like Zam Wesell, who unknowingly served Sith interests, found themselves silenced before they could become a problem. There were also hunters who attempted to defy their Sith employers. The result was always the same. Aurra Singh, once a feared assassin, eventually fell out of favor and was pushed aside. Others disappeared without a trace, their deaths orchestrated to serve the Sith's agenda. Bounty hunters prided themselves on being independent, but working for the Sith meant surrendering that freedom. The pay was high, but the risks were absolute. A hunter who served the Sith too well would eventually outlive their usefulness. And when that happened, no amount of skill, credits, or cunning could save them. The Galactic Empire had no shortage of troops, spies, and officers. Yet when it came to eliminating high-value targets, Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine often turned to bounty hunters. The Imperial military, though vast, lacked the precision and efficiency required to hunt down elusive prey. Rebellion leaders, rogue Jedi, and criminal dissidents were not easy to capture, and the rigid structure of the Imperial chain of command left little room for improvisation. Bounty hunters, with their resourcefulness and disregard for traditional military discipline, proved far more effective. During the early days of the Empire, bounty hunters were used primarily as enforcers against crime syndicates that refused to fall in line. The Hutts, Black Sun, and Crimson Dawn all had their own networks of influence, some of which overlapped with Imperial interests. When diplomatic solutions failed, the Empire sent hunters to apply pressure. Hunters like Boba Fett and Bossk took high-paying Imperial contracts to dismantle rival organizations and eliminate troublesome figures who threatened the Empire's grip. As the rebellion grew, the Empire's reliance on bounty hunters increased. The rebellion did not operate like a traditional army. Its leaders hid in secret bases, its supply lines were scattered, and its informants worked from the shadows. The Imperial Security Bureau struggled to root out these insurgents, and even the feared stormtrooper legions had difficulty tracking down specific individuals. Darth Vader, knowing that time was not on the Empire's side, personally recruited some of the galaxy's deadliest hunters to fill the gaps the military could not. Perhaps the most infamous use of bounty hunters by the Empire came during the hunt for the Millennium Falcon. Following the Battle of Hoth, Vader needed to capture Han Solo, not only to draw out Luke Skywalker, but also to send a message to the Rebel Alliance. He assembled a group of elite hunters aboard the Executor, including Boba Fett, Dengar, Bossk, IG-88, and Zuckuss. Each was given the same target, with the understanding that only the best would succeed. Imperial officers resented Vader's decision to outsource such an important mission, but they had no say in the matter. Boba Fett, as expected, secured the contract. He tracked Solo to Cloud City, where he worked with Lando Calrissian to arrange the capture. The deal with Vader ensured that Fett received his prize, Solo encased in carbonite, while the Empire took full advantage of the situation to draw out more rebels. This single bounty changed the course of the war, weakening the morale of the rebellion and setting the stage for Luke Skywalker's confrontation with Vader. Beyond high-profile cases, the Empire also used lesser-known bounty hunters to suppress smaller rebel cells. Hunters like Bylot Valance, a former Imperial stormtrooper turned cybernetic bounty hunter, were deployed to root out hidden rebel sympathizers. Some bounty hunters were sent after defecting Imperial officers, ensuring that no one who betrayed the Empire lived long enough to share their secrets. The use of bounty hunters was a pragmatic choice for the Empire, but it also revealed a fundamental weakness. While the Sith and high-ranking Imperial officers could command the loyalty of stormtroopers and pilots, they could never fully control bounty hunters. Hunters were mercenaries first, and their loyalty was only as strong as their latest payment. Even those who frequently worked with the Empire, like Boba Fett, never allowed themselves to be fully owned. By the time of the Empire's fall, many of these hunters had moved on to new employers. The Emperor's death, the destruction of the second Death Star, and the collapse of Imperial authority left a power vacuum that hunters quickly adapted to. Some took contracts from warlords trying to hold on to Imperial remnants, while others shifted their focus to the New Republic. The Empire had used bounty hunters to enforce its rule, but in the end, those same hunters were just as willing to serve the highest bidder, regardless of who sat on the throne. Rebellion leaders were not just political dissidents or military commanders. They were the most dangerous fugitives in the galaxy, individuals whose actions threatened to unravel Imperial control. To eliminate them, the Empire relied on both its vast intelligence network and its most ruthless bounty hunters. The war against the rebellion was fought on battlefields, but it was also waged in the shadows, where skilled hunters were deployed to track, capture, or eliminate those who stood against the Emperor's rule. The Empire's list of high-priority targets constantly evolved as rebel cells formed, dissolved, and reassembled across the Outer Rim. Early in the conflict, Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and Saw Gerrera were among the most sought-after figures. Mothma and Organa had once been members of the Imperial Senate, their opposition to Emperor Palpatine seen as treasonous. Saw Gerrera, however, was something else entirely, a warrior with no patience for diplomacy, whose brutal tactics made him a priority target for Imperial enforcers. Bounty hunters played a key role in gathering intelligence on these figures. The Imperial Security Bureau, ISB, used mercenaries to infiltrate suspected rebel sympathizer networks, tracking down informants, slicing into encrypted transmissions, and identifying supply routes. This intelligence often led to direct confrontations, with hunters intercepting rebel couriers or raiding hidden outposts. The goal was simple: cut off the head of the snake before the movement could spread any further. One of the most famous cases was the Empire's pursuit of Princess Leia Organa. Though officially an Imperial senator, Leia's true allegiance was an open secret among high-ranking officials. Vader personally oversaw the hunt for her, but when official channels failed, bounty hunters were considered for the job. Leia proved elusive, using her diplomatic status to evade capture until she was finally taken aboard the Death Star. Even then, she refused to break under interrogation, highlighting the defiance that made rebel leaders so difficult to apprehend. Hera Syndulla, leader of the Ghost Crew and a key figure in the early rebellion, was another major target. Her ability to evade Imperial forces was legendary, with multiple bounty hunters failing to track her movements. Even the Empire's best struggled against Syndulla's sharp instincts and extensive network of allies. Boba Fett himself was once rumored to have been offered a contract to bring her in, though whether he accepted remains unknown. Rebel leaders learned to anticipate bounty hunters, developing countermeasures to throw them off their trail. Some relied on body doubles, others changed their identities frequently, while some maintained false leads to confuse their pursuers. High-profile fugitives like Cassian Andor operated under aliases, making it nearly impossible to confirm their whereabouts. The rebellion also had its own informants within the criminal underworld, tipping off targets before a hunter could close in. The Empire's most significant success in hunting down a rebel leader came with the capture of Han Solo. Though not a political figure, Solo's importance to the rebellion made him a priority target. Jabba the Hutt's bounty on him aligned with Imperial interests, leading to one of the most famous manhunts in galactic history. Boba Fett's tracking skills ensured Solo's capture, and while this event was personal for Jabba, it also served the Empire's larger goals. Despite these efforts, the rebellion survived, adapting to every threat thrown its way. The Empire had the credits, the intelligence, and the ruthlessness to deploy the deadliest hunters in the galaxy, but even the best could not anticipate every move. The rebellion's greatest advantage was not its firepower or strategy, but its ability to outlast every bounty placed upon its leaders. In the underworld of bounty hunting, credits dictate loyalty. Friendships are tenuous, partnerships are temporary, and alliances crumble under the weight of greed and ambition. The only true constant is competition. No matter how professional or disciplined a hunter may be, sooner or later, another will cross their path. And when the stakes are high enough, even long-standing agreements become meaningless. The hunt is not just for bounties, it's for survival, and the greatest threats often come from within. One of the most well-known rivalries was between Boba Fett and Cad Bane. Bane, an expert in the art of tracking and eliminating high-value targets, had once been one of the most feared hunters in the galaxy. However, when Boba Fett rose to prominence, their paths inevitably collided. Rumors suggest that Bane once took the young Fett under his wing, mentoring him in the trade after Jango's death. That uneasy mentorship did not last. As Fett's skills sharpened, their professional respect turned into conflict, with both vying for dominance in the bounty hunter hierarchy. Their final confrontation was legendary, a standoff that ended with both men wounded, Fett with his signature dent in his Mandalorian helmet, and Bane left for dead, though whispers of his survival persisted. Betrayals were not uncommon, even among hunters who claimed to follow a code of honor. Dengar and Bossk, both seasoned professionals, had worked together on multiple occasions, but when larger payouts were on the line, their supposed camaraderie dissolved. Dengar, known for his ruthless pragmatism, had no qualms about selling out allies if it meant advancing his own reputation. Bossk, a Trandoshan bred for the hunt, understood this reality better than most, but still found himself double-crossed more than once. The hunter's code demanded respect, but respect never outweighed survival. Even among hunters operating within guilds, backstabbing was inevitable. The Bounty Hunters Guild was meant to provide structure and stability, ensuring hunters operated under a set of guidelines that protected them from unnecessary infighting. Yet guild members frequently ignored these rules when they became inconvenient. One of the most infamous betrayals occurred when the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, violated guild protocol by refusing to surrender the child, later revealed to be Grogu, to Imperial remnants. What followed was an all-out manhunt, with fellow hunters turning against one of their own. The guild's structure was clear: loyalty to the contract above all else. Djarin broke that rule, and his former allies had no hesitation in trying to eliminate him. Rivalries were not always about contracts or credits. Sometimes they were fueled by personal grudges. Greedo, a Rodian desperate to prove himself in the bounty-hunting profession, made the fatal mistake of underestimating Han Solo. The encounter in the Mos Eisley Cantina was not just a botched job. It was a testament to how overconfidence and underestimating an opponent could be a hunter's undoing. Greedo had no backup plan, no contingency for failure, and in the end, his own ambition led him to a swift death. Perhaps the greatest truth of bounty hunting is that trust is a liability. Every partnership is temporary, every agreement fragile. Today's ally may be tomorrow's adversary. Hunters operate in a profession where hesitation leads to death, and sentimentality is a weakness. The only real code in bounty hunting is survival, and that often means eliminating the competition before they do the same. War is a business, and during the Clone Wars, bounty hunters found themselves in high demand. As the galaxy fractured into chaos, the Republic and the Separatists fought a conflict that stretched across countless worlds, and in the shadows of this colossal war, mercenaries thrived. Governments, warlords, crime syndicates, and political figures all sought the services of those who could kill, capture, or disappear without a trace. If the Jedi and the clones were the soldiers of the war, bounty hunters were the opportunists who turned carnage into credits. The need for skilled assassins and enforcers skyrocketed. The Jedi, once the enforcers of galactic peace, were now frontline commanders, spread thin across distant battlefields. This left the Republic vulnerable to sabotage, kidnappings, and targeted eliminations. Political rivals used bounty hunters to remove opposition, while crime syndicates leveraged the war to expand their influence, often hiring assassins to eliminate local resistance. Meanwhile, the Separatists had no moral objections to outsourcing their dirty work to mercenaries. Count Dooku himself employed killers like Cad Bane, Asajj Ventress, and Aurra Singh for missions that required subtlety, deception, or a complete lack of accountability. Cad Bane was among the most sought-after names in the business, whether it was extracting valuable information from Republic officials, stealing Jedi holocrons, or leading an operation to capture the Chancellor himself. He proved that no job was too dangerous if the price was right. His meticulous planning and ability to counter Jedi tactics made him an asset to anyone willing to pay. The Republic, in contrast, had no official bounty hunter program, but that didn't mean they were above using hired guns when necessary. More than once, the Jedi found themselves forced into uneasy alliances with the very mercenaries they despised, using them to track down separatist leaders or hunt rogue Jedi who had turned against the Order. Jango Fett, the man whose DNA created the entire Grand Army of the Republic, had already cemented his legacy before the war began. His expertise, ruthlessness, and connection to Count Dooku placed him among the most dangerous bounty hunters in the galaxy. Though his death at the hands of Mace Windu cut his career short, his influence continued to be felt throughout the war. Clones, trained using simulations based on Fett's techniques, inherited his combat efficiency, while his son, Boba Fett, spent the war years forging his own reputation. The war also created lucrative opportunities for bounty hunters willing to operate in the underworld. With Republic forces focused on military campaigns, criminal syndicates flourished. The Hutts, Black Sun, and Crimson Dawn all expanded their operations, relying on bounty hunters to enforce their will. Smugglers, spice dealers, and slavers required protection from both Republic forces and rival syndicates. For hunters with no allegiance to either side, war zones became prime hunting grounds, where they could collect fugitives or war deserters without interference. Not all jobs during the war were about assassination or capture. Some were simply about survival. The war left planets devastated, and those who refused to pick a side found themselves targeted by both. Refugees and displaced families became easy targets for traffickers, while mercenary groups exploited planetary governments too weak to defend themselves. In this environment, bounty hunters sometimes became de facto law enforcement, paid to maintain order in places where no one else would. For bounty hunters, the Clone Wars were more than just a galactic conflict. It was an age of endless contracts, where the line between mercenary and soldier blurred. By the time the war ended, many hunters had built reputations that would carry them into the dark times of the Empire. The Republic fell, the Jedi were purged, and the galaxy was reshaped. But for bounty hunters, the game never changed. There would always be war, and there would always be a price on someone's head. The end of the Clone Wars should have brought stability, but in reality, it only reshaped the chaos. With the rise of the Galactic Empire, bounty hunting entered a new phase. The Republic had relied on Jedi-led peacekeeping, but the Empire ruled through fear and overwhelming military might. The balance of power shifted overnight, and bounty hunters had to decide whether they would thrive under the new regime or be crushed by it. In the early years of Imperial rule, bounty hunters found their services in high demand. The Empire expanded its grip across the galaxy, hunting down political dissidents, rogue planetary governors, and remaining pockets of resistance. The Imperial Security Bureau, ISB, and regional MOFs frequently employed bounty hunters to handle problems too delicate for stormtroopers, especially those that required deniability. Unlike Republic-era bounties, which were often limited by legal constraints, Imperial-sanctioned contracts had no moral or ethical limits. A bounty hunter working for the Empire was given full authority to eliminate targets without question. However, this also introduced a dangerous shift in the trade. The Empire wasn't just a client, it was a force of control. Unlike the criminal syndicates or private employers that bounty hunters had dealt with in the past, the Empire dictated the terms. Those who served it had to be careful. Contracts often came with hidden consequences. One day, a hunter might be tasked with eliminating a high-ranking traitor, only to find themselves labeled a liability the next. The Empire had no loyalty to anyone but itself, and many hunters learned that working too closely with Imperial officers meant constantly looking over their shoulder. The Inquisitorius added another layer to the bounty hunting landscape. With the Jedi Order destroyed, the Empire's next priority was exterminating any survivors. Instead of relying solely on bounty hunters to track down Force-sensitive individuals, Palpatine created the Inquisitorius, a secretive organization composed of former Jedi turned enforcers of the Sith. These Inquisitors took over many of the high-profile Jedi hunts, leaving traditional bounty hunters to focus on other Imperial targets. Some hunters resented this change. Others saw it as an opportunity, offering their services to assist the Inquisitors for a share of the profit. Hunters like Cad Bane and the Empire's favored operatives remained useful in bringing in dangerous targets, but the golden age of independent Jedi hunting had ended. For those unwilling to submit to Imperial control, the alternative was the underworld. While the Empire dominated the core worlds and many mid-rim territories, lawlessness still thrived on the outer rim. Smugglers, mercenaries, and independent bounty hunters found work among crime syndicates that flourished under Imperial rule. Jabba the Hutt and the Black Sun continued to expand their influence, knowing that as long as they paid tribute to Imperial officers, they would be left alone. Hunters who refused to work for the Empire often found themselves in the employ of these criminal organizations, taking on jobs that ranged from enforcing protection rackets to tracking down rogue smugglers. The transition from Republic bounties to Imperial manhunts marked a turning point. The Jedi were gone, the Separatists were crushed, and the war was over, yet the demand for bounty hunters remained. Those who adapted to this new reality prospered, while those who resisted found themselves hunted in turn. In the Empire's galaxy, there was no neutral ground. Every bounty hunter had to make a choice: serve the system, exploit its weaknesses, or find themselves on the wrong side of an Imperial blaster. With the fall of the Empire, the galaxy was thrown into disorder. The once mighty Imperial military crumbled, leaving a power vacuum that countless factions rushed to fill. The New Republic sought to restore order, but its influence remained weak in many regions, particularly in the Outer Rim. Without a dominant authority to regulate the galaxy's underworld, bounty hunting became more unpredictable than ever. During the Empire's reign, bounty hunters had clear lines to follow. Contracts came from Imperial officers, crime lords, or political figures who wielded unquestionable authority. After the Emperor's death, that certainty vanished. The Imperial remnants fractured into warlord-controlled territories, each enforcing its own version of the law. Some former Imperial officers turned to bounty hunters to eliminate rivals, while others hired them to track down ex-Imperials fleeing retribution. This chaotic period offered opportunities for hunters who thrived on disorder, but it also introduced new dangers. Without a unified system, bounties were more prone to deception, double crosses, and unexpected consequences. At the same time, the criminal syndicates surged in power. Without the Empire keeping them in check, groups like the Pike Syndicate, Crimson Dawn, and Black Sun expanded rapidly. These organizations had relied on Imperial corruption to maintain their operations, but with the Empire's fall, they saw an opportunity to take control of smuggling routes, spice trades, and planetary economies. Crime bosses now had more influence than ever, and many bounty hunters found themselves working exclusively for syndicates rather than scattered warlords or fledgling governments. For those who had served the Empire, the transition was difficult. Imperial loyal bounty hunters suddenly found themselves without a steady stream of assignments. The New Republic, unlike the Empire, was hesitant to use hunters as enforcers, relying instead on its growing military and law enforcement agencies. Hunters who had built their careers on Imperial contracts were forced to adapt or be left behind. Some, like those who had worked with Vader or the ISB, were actively hunted by the New Republic as war criminals. Others managed to switch allegiances, offering their services to the highest bidder, regardless of ideology. The best survivors of this era were the adaptable ones. Boba Fett, having escaped the Sarlacc, re-emerged into a galaxy where old allegiances meant little. He quickly recognized the shifting tides and positioned himself as an independent power, carving out influence as a crime lord rather than a simple mercenary. Others, like Bossk and Dengar, continued operating as independent hunters, taking contracts from those willing to pay, no matter how dangerous or unstable the situation had become. But for every hunter who thrived in this new era, there were many who didn't. Those who relied too heavily on Imperial stability found themselves obsolete. Without a structured system of bounties, many struggled to find work that was both profitable and reliable. Some turned to outright piracy, raiding cargo ships instead of hunting fugitives. Others faded into obscurity, their reputations no longer enough to guarantee steady employment. The Post-Imperial era reshaped bounty hunting entirely. No longer a profession bound by the stability of a galactic superpower, it had become a free-for-all, where survival depended on cunning, alliances, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. The galaxy had changed, and those who failed to adapt were quickly forgotten. Din Djarin was not the first Mandalorian bounty hunter, nor would he be the last. But his approach to the profession set him apart from the cutthroats, assassins, and mercenaries who had long defined the trade. Unlike the infamous hunters of the past, he operated under a strict moral code, one that often placed him at odds with his own kind. In a profession where betrayal was a survival tactic and loyalty was bought, his actions reshaped the perception of both bounty hunting and Mandalorian culture itself. His early years in the guild followed the traditional methods of the trade. He took contracts, delivered targets, and accepted payment without question. This was the way. But the defining moment came when he refused to turn over a high-value target, a child of Yoda's species, despite the lucrative bounty offered by the remnants of the Empire. That decision sent shockwaves through the guild, marking him as both a renegade and a man of principle. Bounty hunting had always been a profession dictated by survival. Many hunters had codes of honor, but few adhered to them when credits were on the line. Din Djarin operated differently. He showed restraint, mercy, and even attachment, traits considered weaknesses among traditional hunters. His refusal to blindly follow orders distinguished him from his predecessors, and in doing so, he broke the mold of what a bounty hunter was expected to be. The contrast between Din and his contemporaries was stark. While many hunters chased glory, riches, or revenge, his motivation was deeply personal. The Mandalorian creed shaped his identity far more than the bounty hunting profession ever did. This was evident in how he treated his targets, how he valued his word, and how he remained loyal to those who earned his trust. Unlike the ruthless efficiency of Boba Fett or the cold precision of Cad Bane, his strength lay in his ability to adapt without losing his sense of morality. His presence in the guild forced change. His actions, especially his defiance of the Imperial remnant, disrupted the status quo. By proving that a hunter could reject a contract without losing his honor, he set a precedent. While some saw him as a traitor to the profession, others recognized him as a warrior with convictions, something rare in the galaxy's underworld. Beyond the guild, his journey reshaped the perception of Mandalorians. The fall of Mandalore had left their people scattered, with many forced to abandon their heritage or sell their skills to survive. While Mandalorians had long been known as warriors and mercenaries, Din Djarin's path reminded the galaxy that they were more than hired guns. He upheld the values of his people, even as he navigated the morally grey world of bounty hunting. As his legend grew, so did his impact. He demonstrated that honor and bounty hunting were not mutually exclusive. His legacy was not built on brutality, but on integrity. In a galaxy where hunters were feared and distrusted, he stood apart as a man who did not hunt for the highest bidder, but for a greater purpose. The galaxy offers many paths to power, but few are as unforgiving as bounty hunting. It is a profession that promises fortune, reputation, and influence, yet delivers death just as often. For every hunter who amasses a fortune, there are dozens who die nameless in back-alley shootouts or are left drifting in the void. The promise of wealth draws many into the trade, but the cost of survival is often greater than any reward. Bounty hunters live in constant danger. Every contract they take is a calculated risk, a balance between credits and mortality. Reputation dictates opportunities. The greater the name, the higher the stakes. But prestige comes with a target on one's back. The best hunters attract the most dangerous contracts, and every kill or capture earns them new enemies. It is a life where success breeds peril, and longevity is measured not in years, but in battles survived. Some hunters learn to manage the risks. They build alliances, choose their contracts wisely, and avoid unnecessary fights. These are the ones who last the longest, though even they are not immune to betrayal. Many make enough credits to retire, but few walk away entirely. The thrill of the hunt, the power it grants, and the reputation they have built often keep them in the game far longer than they should stay. Those who do retire tend to do so in secrecy, vanishing from the trade to avoid becoming bounties themselves. Others, however, never stop. The ones who chase glory, who see the hunt as more than a job, are the ones who burn the brightest and fall the hardest. Cad Bane, one of the most feared bounty hunters of the Clone Wars, thrived in the chaos of battle. He accumulated wealth and influence, working for the highest bidders across the galaxy. Yet in the end, it was his refusal to step away that led to his downfall. He lived by his guns and died by them, a testament to the fate of those who never learned when to quit. Boba Fett, by contrast, adapted. His near-death experience in the Sarlacc pit forced him to reconsider what his life had become. He chose to rule rather than hunt, recognizing that true power came not from serving the whims of others, but from controlling his own destiny. It was a rare example of a hunter who transitioned into something greater, using his skills to build an empire rather than simply profit from destruction. For most, the profession ends in death. The galaxy is filled with hunters who believed they were untouchable, only to be outmatched by a faster gun, a sharper blade, or a more ruthless rival. The price of a hunter's life is not measured in credits, but in the choices they make, the risks they take, the enemies they create, and the moments they hesitate. In the end, the greatest challenge is not the hunt itself, but knowing when to stop before the galaxy decides for them. Bounty hunting has never remained static. Once regarded as little more than mercenaries willing to work for the highest bidder, many hunters transformed themselves into figures of legend. The profession evolved with the changing galaxy, adapting to new wars, governments, and power structures. Some hunters faded into obscurity, but others became more than mere enforcers. They became rulers, symbols, and in rare cases, something close to heroes. During the Clone Wars, bounty hunters thrived in the chaos of endless conflict. Skilled killers like Cad Bane made fortunes preying on both sides, while others took advantage of the Republic's reliance on unsanctioned operators for covert missions. With the rise of the Empire, hunting became a tool of oppression. The most successful bounty hunters aligned themselves with the Sith and Imperial Warlords, enforcing a brutal order across the galaxy. The fall of the Empire marked another shift. With no singular power dictating the flow of contracts, hunters found themselves at the mercy of criminal syndicates, independent warlords, and the emerging New Republic. Some, like Boba Fett, abandoned traditional bounty hunting to carve out new roles as leaders, using their experience to command rather than obey. Others remained locked in the old ways, clinging to a fading era of lawlessness. The question remains, what is the future of bounty hunting? As governments rise and fall, as crime syndicates grow and collapse, the profession persists. Those who survive understand one simple truth: adaptability is everything. Some will continue working as hired guns, others will shape their own destinies. The greatest of them leave behind legacies that extend beyond credits or contracts. In the end, the galaxy will always need hunters, but it is those who redefine what it means to be one who will be remembered. Bounty hunting is more than a profession. It is a cycle as old as the galaxy itself. No matter the era, no matter the ruling power, there will always be those who chase and those who run. Some hunt for credits, others for vengeance, and a few simply because it is all they have ever known. The line between hunter and warrior, killer and survivor, is often blurred. Mandalorians, assassins, mercenaries, and bounty hunters all walk similar paths, guided by codes of honor, necessity, or sheer brutality. A Jedi may fight for justice, but when a bounty hunter pulls the trigger, does it matter what cause they serve? In the end, the work remains the same. Find the target, eliminate the threat, collect the reward. What keeps the hunt alive is demand. The galaxy is never at peace for long. Governments fall, crime lords rise, and conflicts ensure that someone, somewhere, is always willing to pay for death. Bounty hunters are not heroes or villains. They are a force of nature, thriving in the spaces between law and chaos. There will always be a need for those who do what others cannot. Whether they are feared, respected, or despised, bounty hunters endure. The names may change, but the hunt never ends. Bounty hunters are woven into the fabric of the galaxy's history. They are the enforcers of law and the hands of crime lords. They serve emperors and syndicates, tracking the powerful and the desperate alike. Some rise to legend, their names whispered across cantinas and underworld networks, while others vanish, lost in the ever-changing tides of war and politics. From the lawlessness of the Outer Rim to the polished corridors of imperial palaces, there is always someone willing to pay for a skilled tracker. The fall of the Republic, the rise of the Empire, the birth of the rebellion, and the fractures left in the wake of its victory, all of it ensured that bounty hunting remained a lucrative trade. In times of peace, the hunt is quieter, but it never stops. When rulers shift and systems collapse, contracts are rewritten, and new players step into the game. The Mandalorian Creed, the Assassin's Code, the Underworld's unspoken rules, each shapes the way bounty hunters operate. Some live by honor, others by greed, but all understand one truth: no one is untouchable.